We begin by talking about the characteristics of severe and multiple disabilities. In your degree program, you're majoring in special education, mild, moderate disabilities. And so all the courses that you take, except for this one, your emphasis is on the characteristics of children who have mild and moderate disabilities. In this class, we're going to be talking about severe and multiple disabilities because these children are also going to be in inclusive settings. And so as a special educator, you need to have at least a passing familiarity with the children in this category. We're going to start with the definition from the Mississippi Department of Education of multiple disabilities. So multiple disabilities are concomitant, which means simultaneous impairments such as intellectual disability plus blindness or intellectual disability plus orthopedic impairment, the combination of which causes such severe educational needs that they cannot be accommodated in a special ed program solely for one of the other impairments. And it doesn't include deaf blindness, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But where I want to start is by going back to look at our picture of Colton, and let's talk about what we mean by multiple disabilities. Colton has a visual impairment. He has the muscles in his eyes don't pull together, and so it causes him a visual impairment. He has cerebral palsy, and in a few minutes we're going to talk about what cerebral palsy is. He has a seizure disorder, and we'll talk about that in a minute. He also has a sleep disorder, and he has a significant cognitive disability. So if you looked at his IEP says multiple disabilities because all of those disabilities together create more of an issue than any single one of those disabilities by itself. And so for Colton, we have a really good example of a child who has multiple disabilities. So now we're going to look at autism. Now, Colton does not have autism, and autism is on a spectrum. And so what that means is that you have some kids who have milder versions of autism. You have kids who have more significant involvement with autism. Some kids with autism have very high IQs. Some have very low IQs. In general, when we talk about autism, what we're talking about is a developmental disability that significantly affects verbal and nonverbal communication and social interaction. To get a diagnosis, it has to be evident before age 3. Some other characteristics are engagement in repetitive activities, stereotype movements, that's like hand flapping and spinning and twirling, resistance to environmental change or change in daily routine. They're not just resistant, they absolutely go wild if their routine is interrupted. Unusual responses to sensory experiences. It's not like you think of kids that respond to loud noises and get upset. For a child with autism, it may be a particular soft noise that will get them really upset, or it may be just a particular type of noise that will get them upset. It's not necessary for a child to have all these characteristics to have that diagnosis of autism. These definitions, by the way, are all from the State Department of Education website. The next one is deaf blindness. Deaf blindness was not in that multiple disabilities definition. Deaf blindness means hearing and vision impairments together that affect the child's performance to the point where there's such severe communication and other developmental problems that they can't be accommodated in a program just for deaf children or just for blind children. If you think about this, if a child's deaf, then we use a lot of visual stimuli to teach them. If they're blind, we use a lot of auditory stimuli to teach them. If they're deaf and blind, we can't use visual or auditory stimuli to teach them. We have to use tactile means. And so it makes a completely separate category. The next group are kids with traumatic brain injury. A traumatic brain injury is an acquired injury to the brain because of external force. and it can affect psychosocial impairment, how they get along with others. It can affect their cognition, their language, their memory, their attention, their reasoning, their abstract thinking, judgment, problem solving, sensory, perceptual, motor, psychomotor, physical functioning, information processing, and or speech. The problem with traumatic brain injury is it just depends on which part of the brain is damaged. And so for some children with traumatic brain injury, they will over a number of years recover much of their functioning. For other kids, they go from a point where they are typical children, they have some sort of accident or injury, and then they function as if they had an intellectual disability. Okay, next, reminding us that we're talking about Colton. Next, we have from the State Department of Education the definition for significant cognitive disability. So in this case, in Mississippi, for kids who have intellectual disabilities, they can have what's called an educational disability, which is a mild intellectual disability, or they can have a significant cognitive disability. For this class, these are the kids we're talking about. Educationally, they have a significant cognitive disability. All three of these things have to be true. They have significant cognitive deficits and poor adaptive skill levels, so that they're not able to participate in standard academic curriculum, even with accommodations. They require extensive direct instruction in academic and functional skills in multiple settings. So when you teach it to them in one setting, they don't necessarily generalize it to the next setting. And the third is their inability to complete the standard academic curriculum is not because of extended absences or visual, auditory, or physical disabilities or emotional disabilities or learning disabilities or social or cultural economic disadvantage. We will come back to this definition with great intimacy, I guarantee you. So, outside the school setting, we have a few other definitions we need to look at. All the ones we looked at so far were from the Mississippi Department of Education, and they had to do with school-based services. Another thing we look at is for birth to death, for services that are community-based, not school-based, we use the term developmental disability. And this definition is from the Developmental Disability Act. And it's a severe chronic disability that is attributable to mental, physical impairment, or a combination before age 22, is likely to continue indefinitely, and results in substantial limitations in 3 or more of these areas. So self-care, receptive and expressive language, learning, mobility, self-direction, capacity for independent living, or economic self-sufficiency. Got to have 3 of those. And these weaknesses have to reflect the individual's need for a combination and sequence of special, interdisciplinary, or generic services, individualized support, and other forms of assistance that are of lifelong or extended duration, individually planned and coordinated. It's the same kind of thing that we're doing in the schools, but in this case, what we're doing is we're providing these services for the full range of the person's life. So how do they operate at work? How do they operate in the community? How do they operate at home? These are the kinds of supports that you'll get through the Developmental Disabilities Act. So a few specific conditions that we'll talk about in this class. Cerebral palsy, and I already mentioned to you that this is what Colton has. It's a disorder of movement, muscle tone, or posture that is caused by an insult to the immature developing brain, most often before birth. It happens before birth, but a lot of times the symptoms are not apparent until the child is in infancy or even in preschool years. Impaired movement, exaggerated reflexes, floppiness or rigidity of the limbs and trunk, abnormal posture, involuntary movements. You'll see this on the videos of Colton. That was from the Mayo Clinic. This definition also is from the Mayo Clinic. Colton also has epilepsy, and that's a central nervous system disorder in which the nerve cell activity in your brain is disturbed, causing a seizure, during which you experience abnormal behavior, symptoms, and sensations, including loss of consciousness. Colton has seizures several times a week if his medication's not working well. Okay, so those are our characteristics of severe and multiple disabilities. That's the big picture, and we're going to start just digging into what does all this mean. When kids have this kind of combination of disabilities, then how does that affect how we teach them? That's what this entire class is all about.